Some more of the old heads in the WNBA who still can't seem to get with it and continue to just spread negativity across the league and also seem to never be happy about anything.
A few days ago, Caitlin Clark was the target of the most ridiculous accusations ever made by WNBA players and the so-called authorities. However, because they had the gall to proclaim Clark the biggest trash talker in WNBA history, I'm glad they were hit by swift karma this time. As in, really? Is this the same Caitlin Clark that we are seeing?
There can be women who are older than you, better than you on your team, but if they see that you are a young star and you're doing really well, they will do whatever they can do to sabotage your success.
She remained utterly mute. Even when DeJounte Carrington cruelly prodded her eye or Angel Reese almost dislocated her arm, they're acting as though Clark is out there trash talking everywhere, even though she didn't even use her mouth to defend herself during all of it. The WNBA begins to gain this kind of image since there was also a statistic that revealed a few weeks ago that Caitlin Clark was the target of 17% of the WNBA's egregious fouls this season, with the Chicago Sky accounting for 80% of those infractions. Even though the entire situation was absurd, Clark finally had enough and did not back down. Because let's face it, these individuals would have tried to quiet her in every way they could, twist the facts and apply labels if she hadn't. There was a free promotion for the whole league when Caitlin Clark joined. I apologize, it has something to do with the product. We have never seen a more dynamic women's basketball player than Caitlin Clark. The devoted basketball fans who have been following the WNBA for years have been surpassed by Caitlin Clark. Thus, the entire story began with an astounding piece that appeared with the headlines in which WNBA players accused Caitlin Clark of being the most outrageous trash talker they had ever encountered. However, Caitlin Clark is one of our players who must admit that this woman, who is among the world's most well-known athletes, has altered the game and provided you with a free promotion that is ostensibly all you required. Isn't it right? Let's dissect how ridiculous this is. Yes, Clark is quite competitive, but she doesn't say anything out loud. She is the player who maintains complete concentration in the face of pandemonium. And there have been many instances of anarchy. We are witnessing certain players make a valiant attempt to portray her as the league's ultimate villain, despite the overwhelming evidence that she is about basketball and not trash talk. Every piece of information about Caitlin Clark and everything. Of the hard files and dirty plays being done against her, but I think it's gone really out of hand, and it's just plain humiliating to watch how the WNBA and its media coverage are developing. You wish to discuss how cruel things are, then. Obtained for Caitlin Clark. Imagine Caitlin Clark in the midst of a terrible situation on June 12, 2024, during a crucial playoff game with high stakes. One of the Connecticut Sun's hardest players, DeJounte Carrington, goes in and hits Clark in the eye. Right now, WNBA Twitter is exploding because, too. Indeed, I find it difficult to comprehend, though, how people believe that this could have been planned out in a game. To be able to correctly poke Caitlin the way she did in that play, DeJounte would need to be on some sort of high-level serial killer agenda. She went for the theft, came down like this, and was simultaneously averting her eyes. I'm aware that this is more intense because DeJounte has made remarks regarding the fever and made small barbs at Caitlin on Twitter. However, we are overreacting to this particular play. According to her and Caitlin, it was merely a basketball play. Let's not make this a major issue, even though the referees did miss this call. And we're not conversing. No quotes, no videos, and no receipts. Despite this, the narrative continued to spread like wildfire. It seemed like a last-ditch effort to disparage someone whose sole transgression was being a really skilled basketball player. However, the harm had already been done. Facts and trivia were of no importance to the media. All they needed to sell was something shocking. And caught in the crossfire was Clark, the athlete whose entire career had been based on unwavering dedication. And what was Caitlin Clark's reaction to this mayhem? Quiet, nothing. Clark did what she does best. Even though anyone else may have released a statement or gone on a tirade on social media, she maintained her intense concentration on the game. No response could overpower her quiet power. Just basketball, no drama, no distractions. For Clark, it comes naturally, but most athletes can't even mimic that level of grace. She didn't feel the need to publicly defend herself, despite her reputation being wrongly questioned. As always, she let her game speak for itself and displayed maturity well beyond her years. The referees that the WNBA has recently been using need to be replaced dreadful this season. I believe DeJounte Carrington intentionally poked her in the eye. She acted carelessly. She didn't care where her hand fell as she was attempting to steal. The smear nevertheless made its impression. Even unfounded charges have a tendency to stay, and this one had a lasting impact. She was followed by whispers, and side eyes were incorporated into the story. Known for her unwavering work ethic, Clark was suddenly faced with an additional, wholly undeserved load. Really, having to bear the consequences of someone else's irrational remarks is annoying. Nevertheless, she persevered through everything, never allowing the absurdity to divert her course. However, her admirers weren't going to ignore this. They flooded social media with support, going into full-on defense mode. It went beyond simply supporting their preferred athlete. She had to defend her ethics. They pointed out the evident absence of evidence and criticized Thomas for his absurd charge. We must draw attention to this. Among the things I mentioned was this. If you want to use the word envy to describe some of the players when discussing Caitlin Clark, that's acceptable. Okay, so you want to utilize the term jealousy. The term resentment is what you want to use. We aim to use words to our advantage. That's awesome. Something is going on. Additionally, I believe that certain WNBA women, not all of them, but some of them are not getting the message. The main point is that this girl is a box office draw. Furthermore, if you believe that this was an isolated incident, reconsider. Throughout her career, Clark was subjected to ridiculous amounts of scrutiny. Consider the matchup with the Las Vegas Aces in March 2024. Any other player might have lost it when Kelsey Plum gave Clark such a forceful elbow to the ribs. However, Clark, after taking a moment to collect her breath, she resumed her task. No reprisal, not a drama, just concentrate. She stands out from the others because of her unwavering poise. Clark remained focused on the game, even though other players might have thrown an elbow back. And for that reason, she is among what is the origin of this reputation as a trash talker? To be honest, it seems like someone had to come up with a new reason to be critical of her. She certainly has passion. She does indeed play with fire. Mouthing off to opponents, though, she's not really into it. She uses her energies to create plays rather than argue over trivial matters. The evidence is self-evident. Talking is not Clark's focus, winning is. A peers who has been making three-pointers for 4 years in college and has a longer range than Steph Curry. It's a product. She introduced the WNBA to a product that has suddenly become exciting to a lot of people. Why people can't just accept it is beyond me. How much does it harm you? Gate of black eye. We've probably seen the scene in which DeJounte Carrington prods Caitlin Clark in the eye by now. And so many people are claiming that it was correct after viewing this angle. When DeJounte descends after stealing the ball, her hand lands in Caitlin's eye like this. Do I believe this to have been a careless play? Indeed. Do I believe that her intention was to harm Caitlin Clark? No. Should that have been called a flagrant foul or a foul, in my opinion? How about a casual bump or a romantic tap? This hit was so intense that Clark was in awe. Even though Clark was half blind and had trouble focusing, she continued to play despite the type of blow that would have most players sprawled out on the floor. And it wasn't just any game. It was the outcome of a season in which Clark had sacrificed everything to lead her side to victory, only to be confronted with this cheesy attempt. Because of Caitlin Clark, a lot the WNBA is being watched by these new fans. Anyone pointing out that it's the rookie class? No, it isn't. Caitlin Clark is here. What followed? You'll adore this, I'm sure. The referees ignored Clark's obvious suffering, despite the fact that she was flinching and grasping her face. Not even a second look, no whistle, no foul call. The entire event seemed to have taken place in a different universe. The only people watching were Clark and her admirers. She was attempting to understand a game that she could hardly see. You would think that a clear hit like that would at least require some protection, even though the referees pretended that she was only dreaming about the entire situation. False. Clark was left to withstand it, and let's face it, she did so because she is a tough cookie. I took a while to realize that, all WNBA players are envious of Caitlin Clark. However, after witnessing the events of the last few days, weeks, and months, I had second thoughts. Furthermore, I'm no longer only ashamed of the superstar who has given so many of these females access to opportunities. She didn't say anything even then. No demonstrations, no public outbursts. She continued to play with the same tenacity that makes her unique. However, it only gets worse for her supporters when they see how gracefully she handles these situations. How come someone who is so dedicated to the game and so focused is consistently ignored when it matters? It enrages me. Additionally, it only heightens the annoyance at seeing Clark consistently disregarded by those in charge of upholding the law. I'm ashamed of us ladies alone, too. I can attest from firsthand experience that you will encounter more hatred, jealousy, and pettiness the better you are. Additionally, it frequently stems from other women's self-insecurity. The WNBA's discriminatory practices are so obvious that they could pass for neon signs. For instance, consider Aja Wilson. She received a foul call from Nneka Ogwumike just last month for what appeared to be a light wind. Clark can get half of her face reconstructed in the referee's crickets. In the meanwhile, fans of Clark have had enough of it, and it's mind-blowing. They're sick of seeing her risk her life only to have officials who don't seem to care leave her hanging. Fans of Clark are over this episode with Carrington, which was only the most recent insult. You have all already seen the widely shared videos of the filthy Caitlin Clark is the target of plays and hard fouls. When Caitlin Clark is flung to the ground, we have witnessed members from the other team celebrate. Women are simply refusing to attend media press conferences after games because they do not want to discuss Caitlin Clark. But go back to March 29th, 2023, if you thought that was awful. Clark versus Angel Reese in the NCAA tournament. Reese became so violent during what can only be characterized as a furious altercation that she almost broke Clark's arm in two. The fallout? Clearly uncomfortable, Clark attempted to shrug the discomfort off her arm. Reese, though, she dismissed it, saying it was just a basketball play, as though almost hurting someone was normal. Clark had the option to protest and retaliate with charges, but she chose not to. As always, she chose the high road, and naturally, the media had to make it worse. The WNBA's female players, the league is still being held back by the old heads, the petty, the jealous, and the ones who are unable to embrace the new trend, rather than pointing up Reese's carelessness. As though she were the issue, they came for Clark and criticized her for lacking emotional control or for not being tough enough. We feel as though we've entered a surreal world where Clark is punished for maintaining composure. Even though the media storyline seemed absurd at the time, Clark continues to play, remain mute, and get unfair treatment. In the worst possible way, they have messed up Caitlin Clark. They have done the worst they could with the Caitlin Clark scenario. I also sort of concur with him. On September 14th, 2024, poor Clark managed to live when Alyssa Thomas, the formidable, revealed a shocking accusation against Caitlin Clark and her colleagues from the Connecticut Sun. She did indeed go there. This wasn't your typical sports feud. Everyone was stunned by this grave charge that may destroy one's reputation. Naturally, the media quickly blew it up into a full-fledged circus. The irony was that there was not a single piece of evidence to support Thomas's.